Okay, I hope everyone can hear me in the back. You good? Thanks, Thor, for the intro. My short talk today is about map making using open data. I'm Brandon. I'm the lead developer of the Protomaps project. A bit of background about me. I started this project about 4 years ago as an open source thing, and I work full-time on it now, so it's my full-time job. I've been working with open source software and open data for about 12 years now. So what is Protomaps? It is an alternative to something like Google Maps, but it is totally open source. So it is for interactive web maps. So any kind of application or mobile app that lets you zoom around, that lets you pan around the map, you can use this for that. I'm showing the map again. So interactive maps that you can zoom around, you can pan around. Those are all what Protomaps is for. It's where you would otherwise use something like Google Maps. You can use this, and it's free and open source. So how do these maps work vary at a very high level? Well, they use a data structure called tiles. They often dynamically or pre-compute what the world looks like at different levels of detail. So at the first level, you have the entire world in one square. And as you zoom in, there's going to be more and more detail. There's like a subdivision of each tile into 4 subtiles and on again, to about 15 zoom levels. So basically all popular web maps are built this way. So what Protomaps is under the hood is it is an open format for tile pyramids stored in a single file that you can host on something like S3. You don't need to have a web server or some sort of like server-based process to host a map. You can do this entire thing as a single file. And that means you can zoom all the way in. You can use data I provide to have like a pre-computed map that you can host for your business, for your project or anything. But that's like a high-level overview of what this thing does. Where does the data come from is what I'll talk a little bit about, and some new data sources I'm working with that have to do with AI in some vague sense, because this is like an AI meetup, so I have to mention it somehow. Well, when you go to a place in the world and you take a picture, then like iOS will tell you at the top, I am at like Zhongshan Sports Center. So how does it know that? It has to have some data set about the real world. It can't just make stuff up. It has to have some real world knowledge about what places, what restaurants, what stores and houses and parks exist in the world. So all that data needs to come from somewhere. Usually it comes from a free source like OpenStreetMap, which is one free data source, but it's like you have a database of different tagged places with latitude and longitude. You could feed those as training into like some sort of foundation model. So you could ask it, what is the place that is similar to this around this area? Where's the data come from? And some people say, well, you could just use Google Maps. You can go pay for Google Maps. But people have like these bootleg products that are like Google Maps extractors that you can scrape the API to have a data set, but those are not going to make your lawyers happy because the Google TOS doesn't let you use their data commercially, even though it is like the best data set and you can use it for free when you go into your app on your phone and look around. That doesn't mean that you can use it commercially for free if you are building your own product. Like if you're building Piccolage and you want to build in some sort of like geotagging, you would have to go pay for Google's API, which might be really expensive if you're a popular app. So Google scraping is sort of out of the question. So what else is there? There is a new project this year called Overture Maps. And this is a collaborative open source project from Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. And how this works is it is totally open source, and you can do whatever you want with it, even if it's commercial. It's under a permissive CDLA license. It is one big file you can just download, and you can integrate that into your applications. You can host it on your backend. You can do it whatever, and it's free. Where does the data come from? Right now, a lot of it is Facebook pages. So when businesses go in and edit their business listing. Like if you have a cafe, well, most businesses, they want to show up on Facebook, so they will go in and add that. And Facebook is literally giving you all of that data for free in a structured format that you can use for AI models. You can use it for building a visual map. You can use it for photo tagging. You can do anything. How does this work? The front end to this is, the one I recommend is DuckDB, which is an open source, awesome project. It's like a CLI and library that you can just download as a single file. You can access Parquet files, and you can query this data set of about 60 million places by bounding box. So I can ask for all of Taipei with this rough box. You can just write a SQL query on the command line, or you can use the Python bindings. You can give it coordinates as to where you are in the world, and it will give you back like SQL results. You can see that in the data set. I think it's like the data set maybe is trying to catch up to Google Maps. There's, for some reason, like an overrepresentation of like beauty salons, because I think like a lot of people that are, you know, like nail salons, they want to be on Facebook. So more of that data is in there, better, like probably compared to like a night market stand. You know, there is 4,000 food stands in that bounding box, 5,000 restaurants. But that gives you a high level idea of what data is in the Taipei data set right now that you can use for free. If I ask for just the bounding box on the building we're in, you can see just changing the SQL query. And it has like the Picolage headquarters. It has categories for all of these restaurants, or there's like a church, a school. So this is all open data that you can download and you can use for your own applications, or you can use for your own models or anything. Yeah, so where this comes from is like there's this bistro downstairs, and presumably the business owners, they edited this Facebook page with their address. So you're just getting all of that data without having to scrape it. You're just getting a dump of millions of places that you can use for anything. And some demo apps I've been building off of this data set are putting it into the Protomaps format, which is called PM tiles. So you can go to this GitHub URL, you can browse the entire global data set of Overture places in one map, and you can see what places come from this data in your area. And another fun thing I've been working with Thor on is putting this data into Supabase. So if you wanted to build some sort of database application, like you could go in and you could like add a star rating to this place in your own app. Well, you could all do that serverlessly with Supabase, and you can render it using like Postgres functions. So you can have like thousands of data in one view. So it's totally open source, a data set that I recommend you try out for any sort of application that has to deal with the real world. But I'm happy to talk about using this data set or using other open source tools around this if you guys are curious. Thanks. Do we have time for questions?
I think so, yeah. We actually had one speaker who couldn't make it, so
okay.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, yeah.
Caleb.
Earlier you showed that the data was coming from Facebook pages to an address. So how do you map the bounding boxes location like to an address?
So the data set, they do that already on their side. So they have, the data set will have a column for address and then also a column for latitude and longitude.
Okay.
So you don't need to do it yourself. It has both. So if you want to show the address for display purposes, you can also show that. That's just a column in the data set that I didn't show there. Yep.
How big is all this if I wanted to just get the whole thing and play with it?
It's like less than 10 gigs.
Oh, wow.
So it is quite manageable.
Nice.
And you can, if you use DuckDB, you can just write SQL directly against it. Yep.
Yeah, does the data set include information about the age or like when the Facebook data wherever they're aggregating it from was last updated, so you can kind of weigh data to see accuracy, or how does it handle also, I guess the second question, conflicting entries that are sort of mapped on top of each other?
So for the first question, they have a confidence score because there is some ML stuff that goes into the final data set. Like the mapping from address to lat long is not perfect. So they also have a confidence score that's just like a float number that you can get some idea of like what are the ones that you can be more sure about. The second question was about the update time. They also have an update time, but that's a little like abstract. That's more probably on their side as to like when the data was updated.
I think
Yep.
We do have a question from the live stream, actually. So Ron is asking, how does Overture Maps compare to OpenStreetMaps?
So Overture Maps has a couple of themes, and some of the themes are directly OpenStreetMap data, and they point that out in the data set. They will have a source field, which is where the data comes from. So what Overture is they also combine OSM with other data sources. For example, Microsoft put out a buildings data set. Like they have really good buildings in Africa. And what Overture has done is they've combined the data sets. So we're like, if they're mapped in both, you only have it once instead of two buildings. But for places, they have a similar number of places right now as OpenStreetMap. I think that'll get better over time because they're pulling from Facebook.
Cool. Maybe one
More question.
So in your experience where you compare different regions you're familiar with, maybe would you say that this is Overture is strictly better than OpenStreetMap as a data set to work with, or are there some things where it's adding too much noise, or like not as accurate as OpenStreetMap would be in certain ways?
I'd say it depends completely on region. And my general, like, if I had to like make one high level statement, it's like where OSM is popular and Facebook isn't popular, OSM data is going to be better. Where Facebook is really popular and OSM isn't popular, Facebook data will be better. So like I think like Thailand, like the Facebook data is probably better than OSM. The good thing though is they release a new data set monthly. So they're also kind of like trying to improve this on a month-to-month release schedule, and also adding in more data sets like as they go.
Cool. Okay, one last one.
One last one.
Is there a change set so it's just you can see the compare the snapshots between this? That feels like it might be a more
I kind of have that built. You could just like open it up in two windows, like load a previous data set and then just like flip back and forth. It would be nice to have like a side-by-side comparison. That's something I do want to like make better, yeah. But I don't think there's any like really good tool for that right now.
Well, it feels like it would be an interesting visualization, right? You showed just the single output and just mapping that over time, giving someone a slider or visualize that. That's just me imagining what it would be fun to build with this.
Yeah, I think it'd be really useful.
Sweet. Yeah, please, round of applause for Brandon.